Howdy folks, Dave here at Thunder Mesa Studio where, we do enjoy our mini and micro train layouts. If you tuned in today for an update on the HON3 Barlow Pass project, I do apologize, had to push that back a week because I'm still waiting on some needed materials to arrive. So in the meantime, I thought I'd take this opportunity to tell you about another project that I completed earlier this year, back between January and April. That's the ON18 Rainbow Peak micro layout. I've had an awful lot of people ask me for more information about it, so I thought I'd take this time to do a complete video on the entire build. I did talk a little bit about the Rainbow Peak in an earlier workbench video, but rather than make this a part 2, I wanted to go back and summarize the entire project, show you the whole thing from beginning to end and how it went from an idea to a finished product. It all started when Gary Beatty challenged some of us in our little modeling group to build a functioning model railroad within the 12-inch circumference of one of these, a standard 5-gallon paint bucket. Well, I do like a challenge, and that got me thinking about something I'd always wanted to do. But now let's hop in the Wayback Machine and I'll let past Dave from January tell you more about it. But in short, what I would like to do is a version of Cascade Peak from the old mine train through nature's Wonderland at Disneyland. Cascade Peak and Rainbow Caverns together. So the front side of this little micro layout will be Cascade Peak, and behind that you'll be able to look back through the backside of the mountain into Rainbow Caverns. So putting the two together, I'm calling this Rainbow Peak. Right here I have the roadbed, and I just laser cut this from some 3/16 of an inch thick MDF. Of course, if I was really smart, I would have just laser cut this cork too. Save myself a step, but now I'll apply a little yellow glue. So I'm curving this around and using a track nail. These are Pico track nails. Putting one about every third tie right through the middle. So I drill down using like a size 72 bit. Drill down about halfway through that MDF and then push that the rest of the way in so the MDF will hold that spike into place. This is the whole reason I use the MDF. So I'm going to try to join the outside rails first. And I've already slid a rail joiner on there. I'm going to put a little wire nail right here that I can use as a lever to push that into gauge. And ideally, when I'm done, pull it right out. I just need to slide a rail joiner on there. All right. Okay, here goes nothing. I love it when a plan comes together. Let's see if we can fit this in here. Ah, perfect. I mean, you can carve this stuff with a pencil. Oops, it's twisted. Just doing most of the sculpting now with a sanding block. Getting in there and creating some little ridges and rocky shapes. he's going to get a coat of paint on it. It's handy being able to work on a layout you can just pick up and move around. I've got the light tan here that I used on the San Lorenzo layout for the base color. I think I'm going to mix that about 50-50 or so with this gray to make a medium shade, and that'll give us a good place to start from. Start from the top and work my way down. Usual technique, just hitting the tops of the textures here, letting the darker tones back in the cracks and crevices show through. I've really been looking forward to this stuff because this is when it really comes to life. That texture coat I put on really helps. Really grabs the paint. Okay, now I'll mix some of this color. About 50-50. More of the light tan. So all of those layered colors together really create a realistic look on the rocks. Okay, next lighter shade. One layer at a time. Just going around and doing a little final blending. That light tan. Make sure everything is unified and harmonious. And I'll go ahead and dry brush some tans and grays on the ties as well while I'm at it. So I picked up this bulk pack of pine trees on Amazon. And I'll put a link if you guys are interested. But it said they're HO scale, but I noticed they're actually mostly, smaller. Some of them are just teeny tiny, which is perfect because, they all come in different sizes. They go from 2-3 inches tall down to, what's this, half an inch tall. And I'm following this is an old postcard from it's in black. This is a black and white printout, but you get the idea. This is an old postcard of Cascade Peak when it first opened in 1960, and they purposefully used smaller trees to make it look bigger. Give it that forced perspective. So I'm doing the same thing here, kind of following where they had them planted as close as I can too. These are really not bad looking trees at all. For a bargain. I mean, I think it was $10-12 for the bag. I can't remember. Now I've got some mountain goats that I picked up from Mini Prints. Well, since mountain goats are white, that flat white primer is about 90% of the paint job. And of course, you Great Northern Railway fans out there, mountain goat was the symbol of the Great Northern. I'm going to put him right there. Yeah. Now for these two bridges up here, where the big waterfalls are, I've laser cut some pieces for that. I've got some curved sections of ties, bridge length ties that'll fit up under the rails like that. And then I've got some stringers here, which are all one piece. And all of these are cut out of some 1/8 of an inch thick basswood. This is, I'm cheating on this, of course, because in real life, curved trestles are not curved. They're made up of, short, straight sections that are stitched together. I'm gonna get some stain on these now. I'm using some Minwax touch-up markers. First one I'm using is Classic Gray. Then I'm going to go over the top of that with some Early American. And we'll get the same stain on the stringers. I can go ahead and remove the plastic ties from underneath the rails. This is a pretty short span here, so I'm not too worried about it getting out of gauge, but I will check it regularly as we go here. Now I can start assembling these. I'm going to start with the shorter of the two bridges. Bring this right to there. Oh, that's perfect. Now to hold these bridge decks in place, I'm going to use some 5-minute epoxy applied to the bottom of the rails. And I don't want to mess it up. I'm only going to get one chance at this. If I can get an even smear of epoxy on the bottom of the rails. Get that in place and shove my foam blocks under there. Okay, that's probably the best I can do. Now I just need to wait 20 minutes for the 5-minute epoxy to dry. Okay, that has set up. Take those out. Now I can ballast all the rest of the track. I've got some fine gray ballast here from Woodland Scenics. You know, I probably had this bag of ballast for 20 years. So I'm going to do my usual, sprinkle it on, manicure it, and then, glue it in place with some diluted white glue. All right, now we hit it with a little wet water. And some diluted white glue. Nothing to do now but let that dry overnight. And I'll come back tomorrow. We'll figure out some trestle bends. Now that the glue on that ballast has had a chance to dry, I want to go back and clean all the track so I can be sure that the trains still run. Now I can cut the pieces for my 3 trestle bends. I'm really liking this Minwax Classic Gray for these trestle pieces. My top sill right there against the stop. A little yellow glue on there. And then one of the angled pieces. I'll let all that dry for just a minute. All right, flip that over. Do the diagonal on the other side. Okay, just have to build 2 more. And then I want to add some of these nut bolt washer castings. And these are some Grant Line number 98, size 98. For each one, you've got to drill a little hole with this is a number 70 bit. And then just a little dab of cyanoacrylate on the end of each one, and down they go. That's a lot, doesn't it? Put some wood glue underneath the stringer, on the bottom of the stringer. And then some Aleene's tacky glue down on the bottom of these legs. Slide this under here and then swing it up into place. And the same thing again on this one. Let's see. Now I'm applying some gravel to the bottom of the creek bed. Just want a thin layer of gravel for the most part in all of these places. Now I'll dribble on some diluted white glue. Hold all that in place. I'm going to keep building that up under the abutments. A little bit easier to get it to stay in place once there's some glue in there. So to model these big cascades, it's basically three main steps. Step one is to model the falling water part, and for that I like to use clear acrylic sheet like this, and I'll show you exactly how I do it in a minute. Step two is to do a resin pour with some Envirotex light 2-part epoxy resin. We'll mix some of that up. And then step three is to go back and detail the water surface, add rapids and foam and things like that. And in the past, I've used Mod Podge and other products, but this time I'm going to be using some Woodland Scenic's water effects because I enjoyed using it on the Santa Fe and St. Nick to model things like icicles and stuff like that. So it actually works pretty well. It takes about 24 hours to dry. I'm also using it as a glue to glue my cascading waterfalls into place. You can see here I've just finished modeling these 3 falls on this side. Got the big one down here that goes in front of the track and the 2 smaller ones up there. And those are made with clear acrylic sheet. Like you go to Walmart and get like a cheap poster frame. The stuff is about a 1/16 of an inch thick. You don't want it too thin, but you don't want it too thick either. And then what I need to do for each one of these individual cascades is measure and cut a piece of that clear acrylic that's going to fit there. And that's the piece to fit right there. And you can see how I made it taller. So this top part will be a little flap that bends over. So I've got all the fans going. I've got the windows open because this does create a little bit of fumes. I'm going to be using a hot soldering iron to basically sculpt the surface of this waterfall. So you just go down parallel, one after the other. Just give it a little wiggle as you go, so they're not, totally straight and parallel. And what you're doing is you're creating, facets here that are going to catch the light, and that's what's going to make it look like falling water. But like I say, if you just keep going in the proper direction, this is not a hard technique to do at all. Now, when you get one side done, you turn it over and do the other side and do exactly the same thing. And one of the tricks to making this technique work and make it look realistic is to pay really close attention to the edges. So I like to come back and kind of scallop the edges with the tip of the soldering iron, and I'm just kind of pushing in and causing that to curl back, keeping in mind the direction that the water is falling, which is down this way. Now I want to bend this little flap over. I'll take it, just going to kind of eyeball it and run my soldering iron straight across here while putting a little bit of pressure on that until it starts to bend. There we go. And each one is done the same way. Altogether, there are, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 waterfalls. Well, I'm just about ready to do the resin pour, but before I do, I need to create some sort of dam down here at the bottom of the waterfalls along the edge of the layout. Otherwise, the resin will just pour right off the layout and onto the table, and we don't want that. And the easiest way to do that is with some masking tape. Just putting some right at the edge, like that. And that's really enough to keep the resin from pouring off of there. I've done this before at the edge of the different layouts, and it works fine. I've got some clear plastic cups to mix up the Envirotex in. Start with the actual resin. Put this on a level surface. Now the hardener. Those are darn close to 50-50. Pour the hardener into the resin. You got to do this. You got to kind of scrape it off the sides of the container and make sure you get all of it. And then we start stirring. And then when you think you've got it pretty well mixed, you pour it back into the other container. And when you get it in there, you mix it again. And you do this 3 or 4 times, going back and forth between the 2 containers, and that way you make sure you have a good equal mix of both parts, the resin and the hardener. Now before we pour this, I do want to tint the resin just slightly. You can do that with acrylic paints. Liquid acrylic paints work the best. And I don't want to just pour the paint in there because it's really easy to get too much. Got some brown, and I've got some phthalo green of the Rivers of America at Disneyland. And then we use that, stir it into the resin. I just get a very gradual coloration. Get quite a bit of working time on this. You notice I'm not hurrying. You know, water modeling is one of those things that you don't really know how it's going to look until it's done. What I'm doing, I'm starting up here at the top, and I'm going to let this kind of flow down just like if it was real water. So I want to get some in each one of these little landings. Now as this starts to cure, you'll see all the millions of tiny little bubbles. The easiest way to deal with those, I've found, is one of these barbecue lighters. Lightly run the flame over where the bubbles are, and you will see them disappear. Trick is not to light the whole thing on fire. Okay, it's the next day here now. Time to pull all this tape off and see how we did. There you can see what that water looks like down there. Obviously, I've got a lot of work to do on the base still. I'm going to start up here at the highest point. Just kind of squeeze some out because this is where the water would be bubbling out from. And this stuff goes on white, but it's going to dry clear. Then I want to take some and just squeeze it at the base of each one of these falls, and that'll represent water splashing up. And then you can go back with a paintbrush or a toothpick and kind of form it. Again, I'm just poking it here to create some splashes. All right. Once again, there's really not much left to do except for wait for everything to dry. Well, I think it is high time we finished up the base and the electrical. And to that end, I've cut the bottom off of my paint bucket, just the bottom 4 inches, because this is the only part I'm going to be using. And the layout's going to sit up on top of this. So this will create a base for it. I'm also going to put all of the electrical components, all of the controls and everything are going to be inside of this base. But I also want the thing to rotate. I picked up this Lazy Susan on Amazon. It's a 12-inch Lazy Susan, so the whole thing can sit on top of here and you can view it from any angle. Of course, if the layout rotates, that presents some new problems. You can't have a cord coming out of there. So here I've got all of the components I'm going to need to power the entire layout. This is a lithium-ion rechargeable battery pack. This is the recharging pack, and the thing I like about this is when you plug it in, it gives you a green LED that tells you that the battery is charged. There's power in there. When you're charging, this LED turns red. This is a PWM controller, pulse wave modulation controller. Those of you that follow the Bandit Canyon Railway project are familiar with these. I use one on that. These things work great as control units, much better than a rheostat, in my opinion, for delivering smooth DC power. So this is our throttle control, off, reverse, forward, all that, and all that will be mounted in the bucket right there. I've got a little power strip, little bus that I created, and then we've got just a standard single pole, single throw on off switch. That was easy. Oh, yeah. Given myself an extra long pigtail of wire for the track leads so that the whole top of the layout can be lifted off of here and set to the side, kind of like I have it right now. Okay, now I wired up everything right. This should function when I flip this switch on, this switch on, apply a little throttle. And now this should fit down in here. So Staircase Falls in Rainbow Caverns, looked kind of like Mammoth Hot Springs. Kind of concentric circles coming down. So I'm going to cut some circles here out of my foam, different sizes. Now for each of these pieces, take my wire brush and add some vertical lines, striations coming down. Heat gun. And I'm just going to assemble these as I go. Well, now it's time to put the rainbow into Rainbow Caverns, and I've got 6 bottles of blacklight paint going from purple to kind of reddish orange, purple, blue, green, yellow, orange, and reddish orange. And that's going to make up our rainbow waterfall. Start down this end with the purple. Next we'll go blue. looks like something right out of the wonderful world of Disney, doesn't it? And that goes into orange. And then the red is really more of a fuchsia. Take some titanium white, mix it with a little bit of that blacklight blue. Just along this top edge here, just to get the feeling of movement, falling water. Now I want to cover the whole thing in some acrylic gloss medium, so it'll be shiny like water. Cool. Now I think I'm ready to start installing the LEDs. I'm going to install them one on each side of this so their beams cross each other, so we get nice good coverage from both sides. And these are pre-wired 3mm ultraviolet LEDs. I picked these up on eBay from a company called Lighthouse LEDs. They sell all different kinds. That's where I get my flickering ones from too. Okay. Now I just need to wire these together in parallel. And we run a long pigtail of wire down through this foam, out the bottom, and in here to the power bus to connect to the battery. All right. Is that going to work? Okay. Let's see how we did. This one has kind of an interesting story. It started life as a HON 30, yeah, mini trains Forney. So I laser cut the cab for this and put all that together. Very happy with the way that turned out. But since I took the back end off the Forney, I need to create a small tender for this. And of course, I would like to have at least 3 ore cars to carry passengers around Rainbow Peak and through the caverns that look something like the old Nature's Wonderland cars. They don't have to be exact either. And for all of those cars, I'm going to use the same basic chassis. I've got a bunch of these. I've got like 5 of these old N-scale shorty bobber cabooses from Bachman. And once you pop the lid off, it makes a great little chassis for a small, very small ON18 car. So I'm going to start with the tender. Go ahead and trim all this nonsense off. I'm not going to need any of that. I'll leave the weight on there because I'm going to want that. Good tracking. I think I'll go ahead and prep the other 3 as well while I'm at it, so they'll all be ready to go. I've already built the tender, and I apologize for not showing you the actual build process of this, but I was kind of rapid prototyping right at the laser, designing pieces and then fitting them, and so I ended up just building the whole thing right there, right there next to the laser cutter, and I'm pretty happy with the way it turned out. It's made out of some 1/16 of an inch thick MDF. Then I've got some 35 1/1000 of an inch thick laser board for the top up here, and that fits on one of these bases, which is also out of some 1/16 MDF. And then I have also prototyped the ore cars. Already went ahead and built one of them just to make sure the whole thing would work, and now I have 2 more to build, and I will take you along on the ride for that. So let's get to building here. This is a highly simplified version of the Mine Train Through Nature's Wonderland cars. And the way they go together, it's a two-piece assembly. This is some 35 1/1000th of an inch thick laser board. Just glue up the ends like this. And then this gets glued right on this corner, 90-degree angle like that. And another one on the other side. These cars, by the way, are a scale 3 feet high, 4 feet wide, and 6 feet long. And then slip one of these interior wall pieces in there. Now we'll put the other side on, and an interior piece there also. Now while that glue is still malleable in those corners, glue it to this base, and I'll show you, I've got a laser etched guideline there. Shows me where that's square. The hole in the bottom of each car is to give room for the weight that's already attached to these little frames. So I need to put a floor in here to cover that up. Now flip the cars over because I want to add some 4x6 rails to the bottom of each car on the sides, right out at the edge. I've got primer on all these underframes, but I want them to be like apple red, so we're going to get some paint on these now. All right, I think that's pretty good. I'm going to glue this onto this frame. So I've got some stuff here that's 3/8 of an inch square. So I think I'm just going to cut my benches right out of this. I like the simplicity of this. I discovered it's easier to put the wheels and the couplers back on before I attach the little truck to the bottom of the car. Every good little locomotive should have a name, at least in my opinion. And this one is going to be named Claude, after Claude Coates, the Imagineer who put the rainbow into Rainbow Caverns. We've got some signs for the tender too, but on these I'm painting them red on the edges. Now I can attach tender to the locomotive. I found a very serviceable brass drawbar in my scrap box. That's good. I want to tighten that all the way down. Leave a little bit of slop in there. All right. Let's paint some figures. Each one of these individuals gets a dab of Eileen's tacky glue on their backside, and into the car they go. All right, works for me. Well, the only thing left to do now is to dress up the edges of the peak a little bit. So acrylic modeling paste to the rescue one more time. Just going to stipple this on in a fairly thick coat. All right, that's dry enough. Let's do this. You know what? I think that's done. thank you for joining me today for this start to finish look at the ON18 Rainbow Peak project. I'm very happy to have all of this video coverage of it because shortly after completion, it was purchased by a private collector and then steamed off to a new home. If you'd like even more detailed coverage of the build, there's an in-depth 10-part series that's available to my members over on Patreon. That's at patreon.com/thundermesa. You can also find me on Instagram at thunder.mesa, and I hope you'll check out the resources available on the Thunder Mesa Studio website at thundermesa.studio. As always, a huge thank you and shout out to our Patreon members who help to make these projects and these videos possible. Until next time, keep moving forward, everybody. Adios for now.